So everyone who does not believe in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is obviously going to be outside the pyramid. And those would be the Buddhists,
Atheists,
Jainists,
alright, atheists,
agnostics.
no, those who believe in Jainism. All these people are outside the triangle. So this is a pyramid now. So obviously the biggest room is this one, right?
mm-hmm.
And then this one has a little bit less room, and this one has a little bit less room. And we said if this were like a building, you'd have here, it's very crowded, it's very hot, a lot of smoke, and a lot of folks you don't want to be with in the same room. And in that sense, I mean religiously. So here, who do you have in this room?
Jews.
People who believe that Allah is the Lord. For example, yes, we have Jews.
Zulus.
We have the Zulu. The Zulu, they believe in one Lord. Who else believes in one Lord?
Hindus.
Christians.
Hindus, right? Some Christians, yeah. So some Christians,
Pagans.
some Hindus, pagans, Muslims,
And whatchamacallits?
Yoruba,
Yeah.
Yoruba, Zoroastrians. So a lot of folks in that first room, because they all believe that Allah is the one Lord. But they had other issues. They believed that there are other things that should be worshipped with Allah. The pagan Arabs believe that Allah is the creator, but they believe so they also so all these folks believe Allah is the Lord. So you being in that room, there's nothing that special yet. So that's why the second level is the better level. Here, what kind of tawheed is in the second level? Ubudiyya. Tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is worship. And here, the Muslims are in here. Because they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only, and they worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in how He wants to be worshipped. So we pray to Allah the way He wants people to pray to Him, not made up prayer. So here the Muslims are in this level. Now, as I said, this level is a little bit better. It's not just standing room only. You can sit down, there's no smoke, and the drinks are cold now, right? And then the third level will be Tawheed names and attributes, Asma wa Sifat. Now if it's in the smaller room, so now even from amongst the Muslims, a small number will make it into that top room. Even though it's the easiest type of Tawheed, as we'll discuss later on, inshallah. But we said in this room what happens? Yes, Naam? VIP. And what do people look like in there?
They speak with British accent.
They speak with a British accent, excellent.
They have those eyes.
They wear monocles, yes. And what do they say a lot? Ooh, ooh, ooh. You know, because they're very fancy people. So everybody wants to be in this room. Okay, great. All right. But so this is what we're going to be talking about. So now just a little bit on the folks outside of the room, the atheists, for example, who don't believe in the Creator. And a lot of times, especially here now, they make it look like they're the ones who are scientific, they're the ones who are rational, and you're irrational because you believe in a God that you have not seen, or heard, or felt, or touched, or smelled, or anything. So that's why they think they're the ones who are rational. But I think we did discuss this a little bit last time. Remember, we said, I asked if anyone in the room, we can add Adam. You need something? You look like a criminal, ya akhi kid. Remember, I asked if anyone in the room has ever seen a picture of their brain? What was the answer?
No.
Anybody? No? No one had an MRI, CT scan? We said that if you see the image of your brain, will it increase your certainty that you have a brain? What do you think? At all. And if you see your picture of your brain, you're going to think like, well, I always knew I had one, but now I'm sure I have. Alhamdulillah. Anybody? No, because you mentally saw it before you physically saw it. So mental seeing is stronger sometimes than physical seeing. That's why when we mentioned illusionists, right, magicians, they levitate or they bring a pigeon out of their nose or whatever it is, you don't believe that they really did that. Why? Because mentally you know it's impossible. So even if you see it, you don't believe it. And so dealing with the atheist is not really that difficult. A lot of people think it's difficult. The atheist became an atheist because he really didn't even know much about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If he knew about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the Quran, from Islam, could probably be very unlikely that he'll become an atheist. But he became an atheist as a result of reading other books that have been altered and things of that sort, and that's why they had shaky belief to begin with. So the easy way, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on the atheist, the easy way to deal with the atheist is to give him a copy of the Quran. Say, well, here, you say there's no God, I say there is a God, and he even has a book. So read it, and we'll see, if we'll analyze it, see if it was a book written by man, or if it was a book from a divine being. But I don't want to spend too much time on that, just so we can move on, inshallah. How about polytheism? You know, when you believe that there's more than one God. You know something, when you believe in more than one God, that's difficult to digest. I'll tell you, when I first came to the US, the first person that invited me into their home, he was a devil worshipper. He didn't know he was worshipping devils. He thought there were multiple gods who communicate with him. So he sits in the dark and they tell him stuff, and they tell him that we're gods and he thinks they're gods. And in that sense, he thought he was a prophet. He would go around and tell people that, you know, this is the real deal. So I told him, because Allah says in the Quran that if there were many gods, it wouldn't work very well. So I told him, if there were many gods, the earth would be corrupt. And he said no. They actually use a technique, a system called collaborative leadership. You see? Collaborative leadership. They all run the world together. They don't fight or anything like that. It's very sweet and it's all good. So this is the issue. I'll give you some interesting questions to ask someone who believes that there's more than one God. And any belief that has something crooked in it, you can ask them questions and find out something wrong with it. So for example, someone says there's more than one God. So the first question is, what do you think the first question would be? Someone tells you today, hey, there's more than one God.
Who are the gods?
Huh?
Who are the gods?
Who are the gods? Okay. And basically you're asking him to enumerate them. How many are there? Are they 2 or 3 or 4 or 7? And now if he tells you, let's say 9, your next question is, how did you come to know this information? So what is your source? Because sometimes you find the source. He'll tell you, well, our source is the book of such and such. It was written by this guy. Oh, okay, well, there's a problem right there. You're tracing it back to a book that was written by somebody. All right, what if he... So that's one thing, you can attack the source. Now, if these gods now, you can ask them, are they all equal in power, or are there some gods that have different powers or in charge of different areas? Just like, for example, you know, there are some, like the Greeks, for example, they had a god of war, a god of love, a god of whatever, childbearing, a god of this, a god of that, a god of thunder. So now you ask him, are they all exactly co-equal, or do they have different jobs? If they tell you they're co-equal, an interesting question you can ask is, who split their powers down the middle? You understand? Let's say someone said there are 4 gods and they're all equal. Okay. Was there a bigger god who split their powers exactly, all of them are exactly equal in strength and power and ability to create? Or did they all sit down and agree, look, we gotta all be equal in power, so I'm gonna give up some of my power so we all become equal? These are all interesting questions to ask. If he says no, they're not equal, then, like for example, one of them has 60% of the muscle, and then one guy 30%, and one guy has 10%. Well, then it makes more sense for me to worship the guy with 60% muscle, right? Because then on the day of judgment, I just, you know, he likes me, I like him, hook me up. He's got 60% of the power. Forget the guy with 10%. Yeah? Naturally, you'd pick the one that's stronger. What if they tell you no, but each one has a different, they're all strong, but each one has a different ability? For example, this God, he's the God of love. This one is the God of anger and war. This one is the God of that. So again, well, if the God of love is probably easier to make him happy, right? The God of anger and war and killing and stuff, maybe it's going to take me a lot of worship to make him happy. So let me just focus on this God. Maybe he'll hook me up on the day of judgment. So polytheism doesn't really make a lot of sense. It makes it more difficult for people if you say there's more than one God. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about the universe, about the heavens, لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِهَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهِ لَفَسَدَتَا. That if there were in the heavens more than like other gods besides Allah, they would have become corrupt. It wouldn't work. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in another verse in the Quran, each God would go like with what he wants to do or with what he has created. So it wouldn't work at all. Okay, how about this? If someone tells you there are 3 gods, or let's say 2 gods, this one has 50% power, this one has 50% of the power, and they're exactly equal. Even if they got into a fight, no one would beat the other. They're exactly equal. But what if now the people on earth start, because you think, like, let's say there's 6 billion people on earth and there are 2 gods. 3 billion will love this one, 3 billion will love the other one. What if more people love this god than the other one? Even though they're equal in power, but now are they really equal as gods? They're not, because that one has a lot more love, or people like him more, pray to him more. The other guy's watching and this one's getting all the worship. He's like, somebody gonna worship me or what? Alright, you guys, I don't know if you're with me or not. Anyways, so polytheism, I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. Let's start with Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. And I said, don't ever let the terms confuse you. All you have to do, if you're confused, if this Ubudiyyah, Rububiyyah, or Uluhiyyah, all you have to do is find the root. The first level, the big room there where everybody is, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, because it's from the root Rabb, and you all know the word Rabb, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So it means Rabb is Lord. So this is the belief in Allah as the only one Lord. So what, now, a couple of interesting things. First of all, the messengers of Allah, they didn't call to this type of Tawheed as much as they called to that type of Tawheed. Why not? Because generally, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, that Allah is the only Lord, was not very contested. There wasn't a lot of competition there. A lot of times people had no issue with this. Like, yeah, there is one Lord. But we got to worship our idols to get to the ibadah of Allah. That's why the pagan Arabs, very clear verses, وَلَئِن سَأَلْتَهُمْ مَنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَسَخَّرَ الشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ لَيَقُولُنَّ اللَّهِ. Pagan Arabs, all this wars and fighting, if you ask them who created the heavens and the earth and the sun and the moon, they're going to say Allah. So they know it. So that their issue was, no, we got to get close to Allah through these idols. So generally the prophets of Allah did not call to Tawheed al-Rububiyyah as much as they called to Tawheed al-Ubudiyyah. Interesting thing, some scholars say, and this is I like this opinion very much, some scholars say there is no such thing as a true 100% atheist ever. It's impossible. I actually believe that. That's why when I encounter atheists, I always tell them, you know, do you believe 100% that there's no God? They're like, yeah. No, like deep down. Like, yeah, no, I don't think so. Go home and just dig really deep. It's probably too deep for you. You haven't dug that deep yet. That's why you think, oh yes, confident. But no one really believes there's no God. So the scholars who say this is what they use as proof. You know Fir'aun, right? Everyone knows Fir'aun. Fir'aun, big troublemaker. And this guy, I mean, he thought he was God. And he says very arrogantly and confidently to Musa, he says, look, you know you have no other God but me. He thinks he's God. Even Fir'aun and the things that he used to do, and he used to boil, remember the story of the woman who used to comb his daughter's hair? He boiled her alive with her children. He boiled them before her. They throw the kids in the boiling oil, and then until they fry and everything. Then they throw the other child, then they throw the other child, then they threw the last infant that she had, then they threw her in the cauldron as well. So just to get her to not believe in Allah and to believe in Him. So someone who's going to this level, look what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about him in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about him in the Quran, وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا, the signs of Allah, وَجَحَدُوا بِهَا وَاسْتَيْقَنَتْهَا أَنفُسُهُمْ ظُلْمًا وَعُلُوًّا. So they belied, they denied the signs of Allah, but internally they were certain of it. Can you believe that? Allah is saying, only Allah can say this. So Fir'aun and everything that he's doing, boiling and killing and chopping, internally he was convinced that there is a God. استيقنتها أنفسهم ظلما وعلوا. It's basically out of arrogance and injustice that they denied the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some scholars say that no matter what, someone says they're an atheist, they really do believe in Allah. It can't be 100%. But a lot of times you'll encounter people who can't recognize that fact. There was a friend of ours, and he was studying in Russia back in the communist era. So this woman told him, I don't believe that there is a God. But then look, she's being honest. She says, but when I'm in my room by myself and the door is closed and there's nobody there except me, I feel that there is something else, some other power. Because she said, I only believe in the government, the police, and myself. You know, communism, government, police, and herself. He said, but when the room is closed and there's no government and no police, I feel that there's something else. And the guy tells her, that's something else? That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anyways, so, but that the whole point of that discussion was to tell you that most of the time, the messengers called to the second type of tawheed, not to the first type of tawheed. But anyways, with the first type of tawheed, let's try to understand. Let's try to understand what it's about. Okay, here we go. Which one are we discussing? Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Lordship, Rabb, Rububiyyah. This type of tawheed is to believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who does these three things, or we can make it four to make it easier to understand. Al-Khalq, Al-Mulk, Al-Tadbir. Okay, Al-Khalq wal-Mulk wal-Tadbir, or you can add Al-Rizq also as a fourth category. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does these three things. Al-Khalq is creating, okay, so Allah creates. And then Mulk, the authority, the dominion, the ownership of things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Al-Tadbir, regulating affairs. So here, these three things are done by Allah. This is part of Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. In Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who creates, is the only one who has the authority, the dominion, the ownership over things, and He's the only one who regulates affairs. Right. So now there should be a question coming up in your mind already. Well, first of all, let's take some Quranic proof for these things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقُ وَالْأَمْرُ أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقُ وَالْأَمْرُ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by saying, أَلَا لَهُ الْخَلْقُ. So basically it's like affirming, like a tawqeed, you know. So they're saying no one else has these. Al-Khalq wal-Amr. Khalq, creating. Al-Amr is basically regulating affairs. Are you okay, Akhi? You alright? Okay. So, first question here. In Arabic, if you fashion something, you call it khalq also. Right? So, you guys alright? Yes. Anybody forced to come here today? Alright. Khalq is when you create something. Now, I'm going to give you some verses in the Quran and try to explain to me how it doesn't contradict believing that Allah is the only one that can create. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. The best of those who create. The best of those who create. We said only Allah creates, and now Allah is saying He's the best of those who create. It means there's many who create. Also in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ talks about those who draw images of living things, like who draw people, who draw animals. The Prophet ﷺ describes they'll be thrown into the hellfire with the image that they drew, and it will be said to them, أَحْيُوا مَا خَلَقْتُمْ. Give life to what you khalaqtum, what you have created. So we said in this type of tawheed, Allah is the only creator. But now we have Allah saying in the Quran, He's with the best of creators. And then here, those who draw images bring to life what you created. So, how can we explain this contradiction, what it seems?
So the people that draw things, whatever, are they images for worship or just, you know?
Just, you know.
So even like...
So even like, yeah. Yeah.
So I'm serious, like for example, say I
I'm serious too.
A dog or a cat or whatever.
Yeah.
Then...
Don't do that.
But what if you're not like using it in any way?
Huh?
You're not using it for like worship.
The hadith doesn't say you have to use it in any way. What are you using it for? Like, it's not part of a commercial. Yeah. We don't draw things that have like a living soul. Like yani, you don't draw images. You don't do self-portraits or portraits of your friends or caricatures or whatever it is. No, you don't. I'm sure Miss Winkleberry didn't teach you that in art class, right? Okay. So, but the idea, you're missing the point. The idea is أحيوا ما خلقتم. Bring to life what you have created. We thought Allah is the only creator. So what's happening here? Who can explain something to us here? Anybody?
Read it again.
With these verses we mentioned, they attribute the ability to create to other things besides Allah. But we're saying in this type of tawheed, we're saying Allah is the only creator. Anyone?
Idols. First they created an idol.
So now you just said He created an idol. But we're saying Allah is the only creator.
Like building something is created.
Yeah, building something can be called creating. So if for example, a carpenter builds a door, you can say خلق بابا. He created a door. But we said Allah is the only creator. So how do we understand this? Anybody? Anybody? Yes, sir.
Maybe create something with a soul.
Huh?
Create something with a soul.
Possibly. Create something with a soul, but we still call it create. So how do we explain that? Anybody? Yes?
When he creates, it's at like a different level altogether.
Excellent. It's a different level altogether, like the brother said. Basically, al-khalq means like al-ijad, or like to bring something into existence. But here, our friend the carpenter, what's he doing? He's just reshaping something that already exists. He took a piece of wood, he reshaped it and made a door. So he's not creating in the complete sense as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates. So can people today create any other living thing? No. Is cloning creating something else?
No.
Is it? No. How is it? They're taking ingredients that exist already, right? And whatever method they use, but they're taking ingredients that exist. You know, take this cloning scientist, put him in an empty closet. Okay, tell him, okay, now come out with something. He can't. He needs the ingredients. So the same thing with the carpenter. You know, put him in an empty room and say, okay, create a door now, Mr. Carpenter. He can't. He can only fashion something existing, an existing material, into something else. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings things into existence. So it's a more complete sense in creating. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran basically about creating a fly. Very interesting here. I want to see where I put this. Here we are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Ya ayyuhan nas, ضُرِبَ مَثَلٌ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ. O people, so this is a parable or an example that's been given, so listen. He says, Allah Azza wa Jal says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ لَن يَخْلُقُوا ذُبَابًا. The ones that you call besides Allah, they cannot even create a fly. Then Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَلَوْ اجْتَمَعُوا لَهُ. Even if they all gathered together, they couldn't create one fly. وَإِنْ يَسْلُبْهُمْ الذُّبَابُ شَيْئًا لَا يَسْتَنْقِذُوهُ مِنْهُ. And if the fly takes something away, they can't even get it back from the fly. ضعف الطالب والمطلوب. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, all إِنَّ الَّذِينَ تَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, all the ones that you call besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if they gather together, so if all of them assist each other, they still couldn't create a fly, which means individually they're probably even less able to create a fly, right? Because they're together and they can't do it. So here, this is just a simple insect, this fly, they can't create it. Any of you been to Africa? Yeah, a lot of flies in Africa, right? A lot of flies, not like here, a lot of flies in Africa, you know, all over your eyelids, or your mouth, your lips, and just all the time. Big flies, green bottle flies, all kinds and colors, and great, isn't it? Excellent. So here, and some people catch them with their hands because we're used to them, you know. My aunt once visited this woman, and you know, she brought her the tray, it had tea in it and everything, and then this woman had the ability to clap, you know, hit the flies in the air. So she would be talking to her, yes, alhamdulillah, and that sister ma'arif ish, yeah, and she just kept smacking these flies with her hand and going like this. But the bad news is when she brought the tea, the sugar was the cubes. So then she puts her hand in into the things. How many cubes do you drink? My aunt was like, I don't drink sugar. Anyways, so now there's this lowly insect, this fly that's in millions and millions all over the place. This fly now, you can't, Allah is saying that all the things you call besides Allah, they couldn't create a fly. But now even worse than that. If the fly steals something from them, like, you know, you've got whatever, juice or whatever, and the fly now comes and takes a little bit and flies away, can they retrieve it from the fly? No? Who says no? Who says yes? You think they can get it from the fly?
No.
What about now with all the microscopes and all the little things? I mean, they can extract now a chromosome from a fruit fly. They can't extract, you know, some juice from the fly's belly, or some, you know, a little bit of bread, whatever it is. No? Why not?
Now they can because technology.
Because technology, right? So, but you think Allah will give an example in the Quran that later on the technology will destroy the example? No way. So who can tell me why? This is a biology kind of question.
It gets mixed up with all the other substances and stuff that's already in the bug.
It's possible. What if the fly was fasting and it didn't eat anything?
Yeah, they're pretty.
It heard the adhan maghrib. You can keep a fly in a jar with nothing to eat. You're sure its stomach is empty. You let it have some juice, drink that juice, then what? All right, come on, people. You know how the fly is. Where you
Foods or whatever.
the fly digests the material before it goes into its stomach. Remember? No biology class. No. It was sixth grade when we So the fly, it basically throws up the juices onto the food. The way the fly eats, it comes, then it throws up the juices, and then it sucks everything. It's been digested and mixed already. So no way is Allah going to give an example that technology is going to shatter the example. No way. That's how it is. Alright, so now you understand, Allah is the only one who creates in the true sense. You know, you create this, you create that, you're really reshaping something that already exists. You know, cloning, whatever it is, they're just taking the ingredients already. You know, put them in an empty room and say, okay, now clone something for me. They couldn't. So, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates in the true sense. Al-Mulk is the dominion and the ownership and the authority of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, also Allah mentioned in the Quran that some people have some kind of ownership. So, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أو ما ملكتم مفاتحه. So, or what your right hand possesses, or what the homes to which you own the keys. So now, Allah is saying you own things also, but our Tawheed is saying only Allah owns. So then, what's the difference between the way you own something and the way Allah owns something? Who can tell us?
We own something that can be taken away from us.
Okay. So the first thing, the way you own something can be taken away from you. So now you own a car and you're all cool and stuff, yeah, because you know you got your own car now. And then you do something wrong. He does like wuriya. He takes the keys from you. There you go. No car now. So your ownership, it can be taken away from you. It also can be taken away from you through a catastrophe like the storms we recently had. Tree falls on it, boom, there's your cool ride. Okay, now go pimp your sandals and walk around the place. Alright, so there you go. What else? What is the difference between when you own something and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns something? How long before our break? It's temporary, isn't it? Even your ownership of something is temporary, either until the thing breaks or expires, or until you pass away. So it's temporary. But Allah's ownership isn't temporary, it's complete in the complete sense. And your ownership, like you said, the hurricane, whatever, could take away what you own, but that doesn't happen when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns something. How about the fact that it's limited, right? It's limited in many ways. For example, I own my bag, but I don't own your bag, so I only own what's mine. And even what's mine, I'm limited in how I can use it. I can't use it in a way that displeases Allah, for example. So if I own money, I don't have the right to use it in a way that displeases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even here, the Sharia limits me on how I can use it. So you see, so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns, He owns in the true sense of the word. Alright, people. You guys are so bored, I'm starting to get bored.
We have 5 minutes.
Okay. Alright, how about the last thing, at-tadbir. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He decrees, He controls and regulates affairs. And you can control and regulate certain affairs, right? So what's the difference? We're saying Allah is the only one who does that. And you're saying I could do that.
But other people or other things can intervene.
Huh?
Other things or other people can intervene.
So it's limited again, it's not 100%. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides something, nothing can stop it. When you decide something, a lot of things can stop it. You decide we're going to have a great tournament, we're going to play basketball all day, and then as you're walking out, you hear Pokemon. Oh, there you go. Ruined your plans. You go back and watch it now. And bad day for you because it's a marathon. Followed by a marathon of Digimon. So there you go. Okay. All right. So you're breaking rule number 1. I don't need your help to be funny.
I know, your face was it all.
You want to see something funny? Go look in a mirror. Okay, people. All right. You guys only like it when I make fun of people, huh? Great. Okay, I know what to do from now on. All right. So, you know, you don't control decisions over what you don't own, and you don't totally control the decisions over things that you do own. You can't even totally control decisions and things in your life, right? So one of you right now can say, look, I'm going to leave right now. You can get up and leave. You can control that part. But can you control if you get home safely or not?
No.
Probably not, you know? Or can you control how you want to die in the future? Yeah. Someone says, I don't want to die from cancer. I want to die with all my grandchildren around my bed, and I'm going to say some romantic words of, you know, wisdom, and then I'm going to pass away. So I'll be like, my children and my grandchildren, take care of my Pokemon collection. Okay. All right. So, all right, so you understand the idea now, that what we're saying with this type of tawheed is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who creates in the perfect sense, 100%. He's the one who owns and has the authority and the sovereignty 100%. Not like when you have authority, it's limited. And He is the one who regulates affairs 100%. And some scholars add a fourth category here, which is a rizq that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides, and He, you know, the sustenance and everything for people. In a sense, you can really put it under regulating affairs, but sometimes to explain things better, you can make it a separate category. A rizq is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for you. So someone says, well, I actually work and then I get a paycheck, so I don't see how that's coming into the picture. How do you explain that to this person?
You have to do something to get that.
Yeah, but he's saying, I'm doing it. I don't see how Allah is giving me this rizq. I went and applied for the job, I got the job, now I work and I get a paycheck.
Your knowledge and skills to begin with is what got you that job.
Mm-hmm. Okay, knowledge and skills, yeah.
That goes.
If you're an engineer, you're fixing up parts.
Uh-huh.
It takes away your hands, something like that.
Uh-huh.
Accident,
Okay, good.
you can't prevent.
So you're even saying Allah keeps it there for you. You can have an accident, become paralyzed or something, then you can't do it anymore if you use your hands, for example. But also that ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who provides the rizq. I mean, these are the means now. The fact that you get the interview and you look all cute at the interview and all the other stuff. You get the job, you go to work early, you get your paycheck. That's all the means. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ultimately is the one who provides for you. Because there are people, you know, they're broke, people who are homeless, people who are millionaires. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala distributes the wealth out according to His wisdom amongst His servants. And also other things like you really feel even more. Like I'm sure a fisherman probably can relate his rizq to Allah more than the average computer geek who thinks he's all that. He's just pushing buttons all day. Anyways, not you or you. But the point is this, because you're not geeks, are you? No. You know what a geek is in the language?
Only at 8 o'clock he goes his mom's basically.
No, a geek in the language is someone who swallows live animals. So the bizarre shows would come in the old days, and then the geek would like swallow a mouse live, and then he'd regurgitate and the mouth comes out of his mouth again. So he was a freak, and people would come to watch the geek. So the geek was basically a weird person, and so as nerds became weirder and weirder and they kept working more and more, they were referred to as geeks. Okay. Anyway, so getting back to our main topic. You know, for example, when you go fishing, you guys like fishing?
Oh, love it.
Yeah? Great. So I go fishing. I go overnight fishing just about every weekend. And you know, when you think about it, we go to Burke Lake, right? So it's a big lake, and you look at the size of the lake, and what I threw in the bottom of the lake is just this much area. But the lake is so huge. So now out of all the fish that are swimming all over the place, they have to come and pass my little area, just this area. I mean, my bait isn't like this big where they can bump into it. It's just this big. So when you think about it, like if I do catch a fish, it's rizq really from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That of all the fish traveling all over the place, they came to my little area and they took my bait, you know? So anyway, so ultimately your rizq, everything comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's Tawheed al-Rububiyyah. It's quite easy. A lot of people had it. Prophets didn't have to work on it too much because most people believed it in some degree. Let me close with this point and then we'll take our break. That, like for example, we said the pagan Arabs knew Allah was the only Lord, right? But at the same time, they also, and a lot of people in that group that we put in that room, didn't have it in the perfect sense. What does that mean? They didn't have Tawheed al-Rububiyyah in the perfect sense, because even though, excuse me, I'm allergic to ugly people, excuse me. I didn't say it's because any of you. I think somebody walked by the street. Why? Okay, so so here, like for example, they even though they knew Allah was the creator, they sometimes also believe that that we get rain because of this star or that star. So they used to attribute certain things to other than Allah. So even then, their Tawheed al-Rububiyyah was not in the complete sense. But in the complete sense, you believe Allah is the only creator, He's the only one who regulates affairs, He's the only one who has the true sovereignty or the dominion or the authority or the ownership of things, and not like the way we have ownership, or not like the way we can organize and decree certain things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it in the complete sense, and that's why no one is equal to Allah in the way Allah does things. And that's why, and I'll promise I'll stop with this, if you remember the sheet I passed out the last time, we said that this type of Tawheed deals with the actions of Allah. Remember, Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, it deals with the actions of Allah. So here, these are things Allah does. We don't do anything in this type of Tawheed. We just believe that Allah is the only one who is the creator, the only one who regulates affairs, the only one who has the authority. Understood? Any questions? No? Okay. So we'll stop for a break. How long do you want this break to be?
4 minutes.
Naam? 4? Why 4? Okay, we'll do 5 minutes inshallah. We'll try to clear the room up a little bit and then we'll reconvene inshallah. Sallallahu wa barak ala Muhammad wa ala sahbihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.